I have to say, I do love most of the um, carnivore influences out there, the big name physicians who all have helped the lives of so many people, have helped people live better lives by just correcting their eating habits, by undoing the damage of the culture and of this weird system we live in, where we have been on this mission as a culture, seems like, to deny basic reality about what human beings are. We're carnivores. That's what we are. You know, Biologically speaking, we're meat eating animals. And yes, we can eat some other things in small amounts and be fine, probably, although the jury seems to be out on that as we dive into these things more and more. But there are questions that the physicians are posed with that you notice that they don't really answer a lot of. And I've seen people complain about this in social media groups for carnivore diet people and, animal-based people and the ultra low carb keto, still eating a little bit of plant material people. And one of these problems that I see is, or questions rather, is the question of heart palpitations or arrhythmia. It's a commonly reported side effect of the carnivore diet for some people that people have heart palpitations on this diet when they didn't have them before. I've had them too. And we don't get a lot of good answers from people. Often those questions are ignored when you watch maybe a live stream or in your comment section or whatever. So let's talk about what heart palpitations are. They're where the heartbeat gets irregular. And it can be caused by two things, mostly in the literature. And there's a bunch of other things that can happen. But if you do a radical nutrition dietary change, there are really two things that can happen that can cause heart palpitations. Either you're getting too many electrolytes or you're not getting enough. And in carnivore circles, it's probably that you're not getting enough. This is a mineral deficiency. And the two biggest ones are going to be your magnesium and they're going to be your potassium. Now, we are told often one of the great things about the carnivore diet is you don't need a supplement. That may be true, it may not be true. If you're having heart palpitations, you probably need to supplement in some way. And Keto Chow and Element Electrolytes are both dietary supplements. That is what they are. They don't be fooled. Electrolyte drinks that are really potent, that aren't just Gatorade or Powerade, anything that's actually worth consuming in this way is going to be a nutritional supplement. If you look at the nutrition label for Element Electrolytes, which I'll have on the screen right here, you will see that they contain a rather significant amount of potassium and magnesium, the kinds of levels that you almost have to get through external supplementation, meaning through capsules or pills. Now, there's a couple things to remember here. If you're looking for this kind of supplementation, be careful what you get. Don't just take, the cheapest one you can find. If you're going to do a carnivore diet and get rid of all the plant material in your diet, that means you're probably going to also need to make sure that the capsules, the gel that the capsules are made of collagen or something not plant material. Oftentimes they are veggie capsules. So bear that in mind. I actually stopped taking my creatine monohydrate recently for one reason anyway, because of that. Because the capsules were vegetables, not collagen. Again, if we're going to go very strict carnivore, which I think if you're going to do carnivore, you should at least start there. Maybe add things back in later as time goes on. But I want to talk to you a little bit just about the science of magnesium and this stuff about electrolytes. So the Mayo Clinic tells us about heart palpitations here, that they're caused by a number of things, but for our purposes here, the electrolyte imbalance is the key, because the electrolyte imbalances can be caused by a lack of the proper nutrition in some way. They say, so the Mayo Clinic's website says, quote, substances in the blood called electrolytes, such as potassium, sodium, calcium, and magnesium, help trigger and send electrical impulses in the heart. An imbalance in electrolytes, for example, if they are too low or too high, can interfere with heart signaling and lead to irregular heartbeats, end quote. That's arrhythmia, or palpitations. It's the same thing. It's actually relatively easy to fix, too. A lot of people will tell you, up your sodium. Why am I getting you'll see these in the comments of people's videos. You'll see these in Facebook groups. I assume that there are Twitter groups. I'm not in one, but people will say, well, I'm consuming 4,000 milligrams of sodium a day. How much should I take? For me, in my experience, the way I took care of this myself was through consuming closer to 10,000 milligrams of sodium a day. And that sounds like a lot, but that's like 2.5 teaspoons or so of Redmond's real salt, or 2 packs of the Element unflavored electrolytes. I've never had keto chow, but 2 packs of the Element unflavored electrolytes, and then the rest of the sodium you need from Redmond's real salt to make up for it. It has orders of magnitude more than most carnivore and keto groups will tell you, except for one group, and that's a group called Keto Gains, which their methodology is very different. They're not a carnivore group, but their founders are the same people who came up with Element electrolytes, and that's why I still use their products, because the underlying logic of Keto Gains works because I spend a lot of time in the gym when I'm not nursing a knee injury like I am now. But they came up with Element electrolytes to deal with these problems, and it's a very good product. And I will tell you this much: when I went up to 8 to 10,000 milligrams of sodium a day, which is even more than they're telling people to do, because they're dealing with people on a traditional-ish keto diet. It took care of the problem, but it was one of those things you have to be on top of every single day. So let's talk about the magnesium role in cardiovascular and other problems. This is from a peer-reviewed article called Magnesium in Cardiovascular and Other Disorders, published in the American Journal of Health System Pharmacy back in 2019. So this is a recent article. They tell us that magnesium deficiency can cause all kinds of problems and should be supplemented for those with a risk of deficiency. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you that if you're on the carnivore diet, you need to find an animal source of magnesium, and that can be shellfish or organ meat or those kinds of things. So there are people who will tell you that there is no reason to consume organ meat. And I've been on an experiment recently, I'll tell you about after this quote here, of eliminating the organ meat, and I haven't liked the results. We'll get to that in a second, though. From that article, quote, "Magnesium is an often overlooked electrolyte that is essential to life. Magnesium plays a role in more than 300 enzymatic reactions and is critically involved in energy metabolism, glucose utilization, protein synthesis, fatty acid synthesis and breakdown, ATPase functions, and virtually all hormonal reactions. Magnesium is closely involved in maintaining cellular ionic balance through its association with sodium, potassium, and calcium. Deficiency of magnesium is becoming more common in the U.S. population. It may be attributed to decreased dietary consumption and the use of diuretics. In the elderly, magnesium deficiency may be a consequence of reduced appetite, decreased mitochondrial respiratory activity, and increased myocardial collagen. Conditions that may be associated with magnesium deficiency include hypertension, congestive heart failure, arrhythmia, myocardial infarction, diabetes mellitus, and preeclampsia. Many of these magnesia supplements has been found beneficial in clinical studies. Supplementation should be considered for patients with risk factors for deficiency and should be instituted for patients showing signs of deficiency. In addition to instituting supplementation when appropriate, the clinician should identify and correct the underlying cause of deficiency." End quote. And as always, find a carnivore-friendly doctor if you can. I know there's a resource out there for that. I will try to find it for you and put it up here on this channel. So subscribe if you are interested in this topic or other basic carnivore topics that a lot of groups are overlooking. Remember, the idea pushed by most carnivore influencers is that supplementing is not necessary. They then tell you to drink Element or keto chow, which are supplements, strictly speaking. If you're having arrhythmia, which is just the clinical name for heart palpitations, you may need to find an animal source for magnesium or take a clean magnesium supplement. If you're going to supplement externally magnesium, take a clean potassium one too. There's an interaction effect that's positive there. But I don't think you can, if you're having heart palpitations and you're not consuming organ meat, you may also want to try that as well. Now, some will say, well, there's a risk with getting too much vitamin A. Again, the jury seems to be out on that, but there are other organs besides liver to consume. I actually think pancreas is a pretty good one. So if you want, I'm going to probably revisit soon as I begin to reintroduce organ meats in the next few days myself, because I haven't liked my experiment of ditching organ meats, even though I don't like liver at all, but the results haven't been good. Those heart palpitations that were just kind of a minor thing got worse for me. So at least for me, I probably need to be consuming them. But you might need to consider this. And so I will probably do a video soon on my organ meat protocol. I'm going to come up with 2 or 3 variations of it. My liver heavy one will only have 2 days a week that I would consume liver, because I don't like liver. It'll include beef, heart, pancreas, and some other things, but it won't be anything quite as, crazy looking as the Liver King's liver diet, or Dr. Saladino's, chopping board full of raw animal organs, or anything like that. But magnesium and potassium are going to be essential for taking care of this problem. So you may want to consider external supplementation. Some groups that you might want to consider also looking towards for nutrition advice when it comes to these kinds of things, like fat loss and other things that kind of go outside of what is acceptable from other carnivore influencers, are going to be your carnivore bodybuilding groups. There's actually a Facebook group called Carnivore Bodybuilding, and here you got guys talking openly about how they, when they're trying to burn fat, what do? They cut back on their fat intake. Or when they're during their bulking season, where they're trying to get bigger the way bodybuilders do, they increase their fat, or they start using dairy. And they talk about supplementation in there, and these are carnivores, and they don't sound like most of the carnivore influencers. So this is going to be a little eye-opening for some people, and I suggest people go and take a look and just have to see what these kinds of folks are saying, because the more information you get, the better informed you are to make the decisions that fit your life personally. Now, let me know what you thought of this in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help channels like this grow, and have an optimal day.